Alright, 111, Thermite Welds, Orgo, Thermite Chapter, Introducing Proper Welding Safety Procedure that stands for the installation quality, Thermite Weld, continued safe operation, Union Pacific Railroad. Personal protective equipment safety, general replacement rail, weather restriction, identified rail type, alloy, stand determined weld, location compromised, weld compromised, transitional speed restriction, alloy rail, eliminated bolts, reference marks, remove the defects, torch cut rails, rail puller, clean rail ends, rail end gap, standard 1-inch wide gap, weld, alignment system, create crown, standard wide gap, weld, rail alignment, straight compromised, bolt, molds, base plate packaging, mold, base plate luting, preheating procedure using oxygen process equipment, starting preheat process, monitoring preheating process, rail take, propane compressed air rail, preheater model GL3800B, crucible ignition, pouring, minimum takedown times, remove excessive mold, roughing, grinding, finishing, grinding. Weld tolerance specification, identified weld, thermite weld quality audit, cleanup with the Welders Log Booklet, thermite head, repair weld, rail preparation die, penetration disc, crown rail, torch HUD, height, mold clamp, preheating oxy fuel, torch takedown times, project weld, cooling, grinding, cleanup, required mold, equipment. Alright, personal equipment, protective equipment, abrasive grinding and cutting, hard hat, prior hearing protection, eye protection, wear hole and clear lens, grind, molding and safety glass, wear wraparound, face shield, safety glasses, 5 shield, 5 grade, number 5, welding jacket, welding sleeve, leather leggings, approved safety tool, boys, flame resistant clothing, safe, respiratory policy, respiratory requirement, oxy-fuel, gas, cutting, warming rail, removing mill, hard to hit, protection, dual, eye protection valve, wraparound, face shield, the safety goggles, the one has to be number shade, 5, Mono Google XRT safety, number 5, safety goggles can be used alternative in leather, welding gloves, welding jacket, welding sleeve, leather leggings, approved safety tube, boots, flaming resistant clothing, reserve preheat time, separate repertory process, respiratory requirements, removing welding, weld mode material, risers, hard hat, hearing protection, eye protection, wraparound face shield with the goggles, safety glasses, mono XDRL, safety goggles must use an alternative work goggles, welding jacket, and welding sleeves, approved safety hat, toe boots, flame resistant clothing. Packing molds, hard hat, and gloves are required. Safety. The presence of the moisture of thermite portion of the crucible can lead to the rapid buildup of the uncontrolled relief of the steam of the transit reaction occur with the makeup of the ejection of the molten metal of the crucible. Therefore, thermite portion crucible molds must be dry. Moisture must not be allowed to enter the system before during welding process. Moisture will also cause the weld to be effective. General, the instruction below must be followed with insight. Install the thermite weld with the instruction apply with it only. Installing the Orgo thermite welds only. Orgo thermite materials, mold portion, pre-mixing, packing sign, crucibles ready to be used. Installing Orgo thermite welds. Individual thermite welds are the responsibility of the welder performing the preheating of the rail ends. All thermite welds must be roughly marked with an indicated original amount of the rail between the mark. Do not use the wet crucible mold to thermite oxide charged to make the weld. If moisture agent for the crucible molds and charges are suspected of being present, and then one of them discard and damage the item. Before discharging chargers and igniters, contact local manager, environmental field operation for instruction on proper disposal. It's critical the success of the weld, no movement, shock, vibration occur with the rail during the solidification process of the molten steel. Required shelf life of the weld kits is 3 years. All weld kits must be stored in a dry location. Take more than 3 kits high. Using mold kits, inspect crucible for loose stain, cracks, loose thimbles, molds. Their broken piece missing should not be used. Standard mold rail end mismatch up to 1/8 of an inch. New warm molds to rail ends mismatch 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch compromised weld. Different rail base width must not be installed in class 4 above main tracks on subdivision. Regularly scheduled passenger train operate on subdivision excess of 40 million gross tons. It's not recommended thermite with a weld non-curve of the worn rail, section curve of the worn rail, especially high side. With the curve of the maximum difference of the curve of the worn rail head with the should not exceed 1/8 of an inch gate side of the rail head. Measurement of the curve of the rail where that should be taken with the top of the rail with the preparation log thermite weld with the center of the curve and applying with the rail. Reinforcement weld strap with the thermite welds only with the under following circumstance every class thermite welds are on. They're not rail different section rail base width. Thermite welds involve any alloy rail, one or both rails. Replacement rails. All replacement rails with the ultrasonic test, the compromise, certified with complying with the engineering track maintenance field handbook. Replacement railroads with the maintenance weld with at least 15 feet in length with a vertical height difference not exceeding 1/4 inch. The the compromised transition rail 6-inch bay with the male and mismatch exceeds 1/4 inch of the main track siding. Torch cut rail ends must leave the 2-inch. Remove the rail saw with the rail end with the ground down. Eliminating mass ground portion must be covered with the one replacement rail. Installed with the main track of the thermite welding rail ends must be square to get proper crown. Weather restriction: when served with the transfer temperature of the weather conditions are present, observe the following welding restriction: not make thermite welds on alloy when temperature range rail temperature below 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and do not make thermite welds on non-alloy rail with the rail temperature falls below 5 degrees. When rail temperature is below 40 degrees, windy condition, the thermite weld must be covered immediately after the shearing and the cooling cap of the welding blanket until the weld cools below 700 degrees. Prevent welding from cooling too quickly during the light rain, sleet, or snow with a mist. Do not begin welding process unless the protective of the wet weather. Of the thermite weld process already progressed. If the protect the weld, except for the moisture for the top of the welding operating, take on the following pressure for the prevent moisture for the entering the mold crucible. The welding charge. Use the welding tent solid top of this will allow the prevent moisture for the entering the mold. The crucible use the umbrella if it allows only the moisture can air and entirely prevent with the entire molten crucible. Ensure the rain and sleet and snow with the mist does not cool the rail placing on the weld and tension for the rail contacts. Use a rail powder when the condition required to prevent rail movement. Do not during takedown. All welding and mold remnant slag must be played with to eliminate all hazards, including slipping, tripping of all hazards. Before applying molds, do with the rail thermometer pyrometer to check with the rail temperature. If the rail temperature is below 35 degrees warm, the rails foul. Heat 30 inch to 36 inch for the end of each of the rail with the rail temperature between 90 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Add supplemental heat to remove the surface conditions. Identify the rail type of the alloy. Standard rail must be determined because of the different rail chemistry, but the determined specifically meeting the welding requirements. Determining weld location, not make the weld on the top of the tie. Ensure the two guide ties immediately under each side of the weld. Proper support. Do not place a thermite weld closer than 30 inches of the existing plant weld within track weld with a subdivision equal to the greater 70 million gross tons. Supply chief and engineer make the thermite welds at least 15 feet from the existing rail joint. The thermite weld for a list of a subdivision must comply with a 15-foot rule with refer to TMP homepage link and 15 weld rule subdivision. Note: special track work includes switching rail crossing diamond to make weld with at least 30 inches from the existing rail joint weld at any time. Subdivision within 75 million gross tons. Specified the chief and engineer make thermite welds at least 30 inches from an existing rail joint with a weld at any type. Note: in order to prevent weld cluster of the multitude of thermite welds installed closely together to no more than 4 thermite welds that are allowed in the 39-foot section of the compromised weld. Identify hand joints welded as follows. Standing between the bolt back towards the larger rail with the face smaller rail with the joint left side with the bolt designated as the left hand joint, and the joint with the right side should be designated with the right hand joint. Compromise weld kit is not interchangeable due to the different base offset of the gauge and field side. Gauge side with the base offset at 1/8 inch, field side base offset 3/8 inch. Do not make compromise weld between the rail different rail chemistry of the difference width of the base between 136 pound alloy and 119 standard carbon steel. If the rails are different base of the width of the different chemistry, they must be joined with a weld standard. Carbon rail, same with the section alloy rail with the alloy rail with the length of the rail cut must be not less than 15 feet with the make of the compromise weld between the rail with the same chemistry, figure 11 and 1D. Compromise weld opposite rail should be made within the same crib. Compromise and transition rail camp design transition required to produce eliminate the use of the compromised thermite welds on main track and siding. See figure 11E. Steering drawings are available on engineering department webpage. Procedure standards. Speed restriction alloy rails for all thermite welds involving the alloy rail restrict the speed maximum 30 miles an hour for a minimum of 25 hours after installation. Do not remove the speed restriction until all thermite in class 3 above the extra inspected and protected weld mate straps. Eliminate bolt holes in thermite welds or solve the thermite weld with the required weld mate straps. Eliminate bolt hole with the center close within 8 inch for the rail end being welded with the holes need. Install the weld mate straps on thermite welds but do not require the use of the welded mate strap. Eliminate all holes with the center close within 6 inches for the rail ends being well. This includes bottom wire holes drilled in a single maintainer's reference mark with applied with a reference mark with a cutting rail, removing the joint with the outline with the engineering track maintenance field with a handbook. Figure 7.0 track buckling prevention guidelines. Remove the defect with refer to engine track maintenance field handbook with remove the defect remediation maintenance section 4 rail and joints. Replacement rail is required with more than one defect with any of the kind. The defect with the same with 39 foot in the length of the rail. Same depth except with the bolt hole crack. Defect with the rail. The defect your car is defect with the weld. Do the following on plant weld. Cut out with the defect. Remove the 1/2 inch section 3/4 of an inch in each direction. Stand over the weld and thermite weld with the cut out with the defect with remove the 2 3/4 inch in section of the rail. At least 1/3 of an inch in each direction from the center of the weld. Remove the 2 3/4 inch thermite weld. Remove the 1/2 inch plant over the end track weld with the defect in the weld. When previously marked with a detector car personnel with the repair of the entire defect must be removed. Each of the rail visually inspected the internal installing thermite weld. If rail is not cut and marks are not visible, rail must be retested. If the rail is not cut with the marks are visible, cut on outside with the marks. See figure 1111G. Cut on outside corner of the defect. If previously cut out, no marks are visible. To remove 1/38 of inch of each. See figure 11H. Mark 1/38 of inch from each end. Torch cut rail. Anytime the rail is cutting with a torch, do the following: rail saw trim with the torch cut rail and square immediately after the torch cut is made, with eliminate the growth of the deep thermal heat cracks. All indication of the torch must be removed. If the rail is not even the square touch rail end within 15 minutes after the torch cut is made, an additional 2 inches of the rail must be removed from the rail end to get past the thermal crack growth. Rail puller. Refer to Chapter 104.13 Hydraulic Rail Pullers Operating Instruction. When using the rail puller, when installing the thermite weld, the following procedures: strip the rail joint, tamp with at least 2 ties each side of the joint before placing the rail puller on the rail. Remove the sufficient amount of the rail anchors to level the longitudinal movement of the rail line. Placement must be to achieve the crown and horizontal alignment prior to pulling the rail. Remove the grinding of any raised leading of the foreign object with the rail pullers. Will contact the rail. Remove the dirt and grease with the air with the wire brush with the torch when it's necessary. Clean inspection of the rail puller jaw with the condition with the good review for the gripping of the operating with the rail puller. Obtain the correct gap. Never remove the additional rail anchors while rail puller is under pressure. If the desired puller cannot be achieved, relieve so the expander. Remove the additional anchors. Repeat the process. Remove the rail puller after the weld if it's cool to 700 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Check the weld temperature from the top of the center of the welding using 700 degrees temp stick with a pyrometer. With the temp stick does not melt with the pyrometer registers 7 degrees Fahrenheit less. Remove the rail expander gradually. Clean rail ends, removing dirt with dust, and rust, other material. Then ensure the time while you with the actual fuel torch to remove mill scale 3/4 inch for each of the end of the rail around the entire peripheral grease, 4 inches of the end of each rail. The wire brush to remove. Dirt and rust, other material with a 4 inch for each end of the rail. Visually inspect the rail end of the defects. Rail end gap, standard 1 inch wide gap weld. The required gap with achieved with the 1/6 inch before the thermite weld. Improper gap weld results in improper preheating, lack of sufficient weld material. Rail must be cut square within 1/16 of the inch perpendicular with the top of the bottom from the gauge side with the field side with the combined deviation on both rails will not exceed 1/8 of an inch. When the thermite welding created with the proper gap, it's followed with graded 1 inch gap for the standard thermite weld. Graded 2 3/4 inch gap with the wide gap weld alignment system. Use rail alignment plate with the required install thermite weld with exemption. Alignment wedge of the must not only be used with the rail alignment plates fail to work properly, such as switches. Steel wedges must be kept in safe condition. Metal flow dressed, eliminated crash shifting after dressing. Welding wedge can apply and improve the protective covering. Alright, creating crown standard wide gap weld with a 36 inch straight edge within short of the proper crown established with a tapered gauge required with a set with adjustable type of straight edge must always use the non-adjustable straight edge weld. The crown rail ends use the great proper crown. Use the rail alignment plate to do the following: on wood ties, move the tie plate with the accommodate rail alignment plate with the adds or air ties. Proper fit the alignment of the plates if necessary. On concrete ties, remove the pads if necessary to accommodate realignment of the plates. Rail fasteners may not be removed with the 2 to 3 ties each side of the crown. Insert rail alignment plate with and adjust the achieve the required crown. With proper end of each of the rail, contact ownership of the traded with the proper crown standing with a 65,000 inch, 70,000 inch, 90,000 inch, and 95,000 inch wider gap weld. See figure 11, 111, 111-17 rail alignment straight compromise with the rail twist with the misalignment with the rail head with the base with the center axe with the down alive with the making with the weld with the 36 inch straight head with the check with the alignment of the rail with the ensure the gauge with the side with the rail with the perfectly aligned with the base with the rail first with the head with the rail with the lastly getting with the proper crown. Rail joints were only with the except for the curve of the worn aligning rail with the field side with the head of the base with the compromised joint with the wear of the rails on with a different base with the U with the lining plate with the G with the proper crown. Align rails to the base with the gauge with the side with the 1/8 inch offset with the base with the field side with the 3/8 inch and Offset with the line with the rail with the gauge side of the head is perfectly aligned. Compromise weld with the hand and welded molds of the design, and offset with the design left hand with the right hand with the compromised weld molds interchangeable and cannot be modified with the fit with the other rail figurations. Mold base plate packaging. Mold base plate. Step 1, plate for the mark on the bolt with the rail size mark at each of the rail with 2.5 inch for the end of each rail with the preheater 11-1J with the which for the check of the rail and temperature during the preheating of 450 degrees temp stick with only. Do not pack beyond these marks. 2.5 inch of the heat marks, measure marks. To check with the mold to fit again with the ensuring with no gap with the present before clipping the rail with the filling, the rubber by with the needed inch for the proper mold of the rail fit with the over the rubbing the filling may cover the flashing due to gap. The following steps are a 3-piece weld only. Step A, clean the base plate to allow the base brick to free it freely. Step B, maintain the base plate with a good condition with the line with a properly right angle with the rail. Step C, ensure the reach of the base brick with the exact center of the rail gap evenly spaced with the left side of the base. Then ensure the clamping screw with their snug with the bit over tight with their in position perpendicularly with the rail to allow ease of the packaging. After insulating the base plates, recheck with the alignment of the crown and readjust if necessary with taking the precaution not to cover the damage of the base of the brick. Plate with the setting gauge of the welding gap, see figure 11K. Setting gauge placement, 1-inch gap. Attach the universal clamp with the rail flush within the end of the setting of the gauge to ensure the clamp is absolutely vertical position. Half of the mold is applied. Center over the gap, swivel the arm, screw with slightly tighten with lifting upwards within the mold shoe. Apply with only half of the same fashion while lining the base for the top. Swivel the arm, screw with it should not be over tightened. Should be left with the horizontal position to allow for the slag pan placement. Tap at the bottom of the both molded shoes slightly to ensure the tight fit. Check the alignment of the mold halves on the rail gap and ensure the mold fillers are flush with the outside and bottom. Check with the diverting of the plug for the fit holes have been exhaustively filled. When welding in the curve of the fill file with the diverting plug with ensure the set level will be installed to provide uniform distribution of the molten seal without impairing if any gap with the large and airing enough of the luting the same with the enter of the mold cavity to fill with the gap with the paper to prevent luting of the same with the entering of the cavity. Cover the top of the mold to prevent any of the foreign material with the enter of the mold cavity during packaging. Alright, luting. Using only orgothermite luting and sand with the orgothermite weld kits. Pack the mold solid with the luting sand and swallow with the tightly pack all the seams, starting with the base for the top is followed with the base lip with the 2-piece for the bottom rail base, the top of the rail base, rail head side mold above the rail head, pouring lip, but do not pound against the luting sand as this will cause the rail to misalign. Mold shoes should be firmly packed so that their luting flare is full. Ensure the packaging does not enter the molded cavity. If luting sand does not enter the molding cavity, disassemble the mold, remove the sand mixture, repack the mold. Position slag pans onto the mold sleeve with the lugs before beginning preheat. Dry slag pans. Preheating torch to ensure the oil moistures. Remove the pan packaging. Store the preheating cycle can be immediately with the after packaging is complete. When the packaging is complete, do not allow finished mold to sit more than 10 minutes before preheating. Preheating procedure. Before preheating, ensure that they're familiar with the way they have been properly trained with the operation of the equipment. The stopwatch is required with the thermite weld with the preheating tab with the takedown with the time of the prior preheating to do the following with the torch. Must level the torch tight. Check the prior preheating. Place burn saddle with the assembly on the universal clamp drum and the saddle adjustment knob with the center of the burn head in the gap. Line the burn header with the vertical straight with the knob pointing toward the gauge of the field side with the rail head. After aligning the burner, remove the burner saddle to assemble the universal clamp. Using oxypropane equipment, you with the HESO, the SKV, with the 5 with the preheater burn, with the HESO, the burn stem, with the Victor with the HG310C, the torch body equivalent, Realtek flathead with the Victor TWN5, rectangular torch head pressure setting with the may vary with each of the equipment should be adjusted accordingly. Torch monitor, the inline gauges must be with the wide working problem with the vary pressure the setting with every weld will be placed between the torch handle and flashback arrest. Extreme pressure variance of the 15 psi but or more between the cylinder regulator and gauge line indicate with the restriction and problem that must be corrected. Ensure the sufficient oxygen fuel gauge in the cylinder is completely for preheating. Pressure setting are required. The torch is shown with both in standard 1-inch and wide gap welds. Assume the torch is 50 foot long, 3/8 inch inside the diameter grade T. Check hose valve with the flashback arresters for the label 111. Verify the oxygen propane pressure for the torch. Adjust enough of the following pressure setting that require the torch. The torch must be in the mold flame. Adjust the proper to achieve these settings. Propane 15 psi, 1-inch wide gap 15 psi, oxide 60 psi. Units hose length greater than 100 feet. Operate torch at 1/3 inch above the top of the rail standard 1-inch weld. Will operate 2 3/8 inch above the top of the rail with a wide gap weld. Ignite oxygen propane torch placed onto the rail mounted torch stand. Adjust the fully oxygen open the oxygen valve completely. Open the propane valve, crackle sound occurs. The slowly close the propane valve with uncool crackle sounds. Start with the preheat process. The following required preheat time is with the 5.5-inch rail base, 119 or smaller, 5.5 and 5.5 minutes for the wide end standard, and 6.5 rail inch, 119, 6.5 to 6 to 6.5 to 6.5 wide gap. 90 to 8 minutes in preheating. Monitoring preheating process. When we cover the personal protective equipment, monitoring with the preheat process, the of the torch is setting with the tray with the employee igniting place for the torch must observe the entire preheating of the rail end with the ensure the rail ends do not melt, with the ensure the rail ends molds heat evenly, prevent improper fusion, internal crack with the result of the uneven cooling. Ensure the web glow of the bright red orange of the nose sign with the sweating of the melting of the rail ends appear with the getting of the too hot with the cooling frame with the increase of the propane flowing with the torch for the handle. Ensure the rail hand base glow with the dull red, but they have no black hair with the after move with the torch. Observe the true color of the rail end, but they do not have the color replaced with the torch, continuing preheating. If real end melting occurs, stop, tear down molds, recut rail ends, and start over. The preheating is complete with the required preheat with the time as achieved, and the rail base is 450 degrees on all four sides. After the torque measure for the 2.5 inches from the end of the rail with the temp stick. Do not use a pyrometer to check with the rail base temperature. Railtech propane compressed air rail preheater model 3800B to set up to operate with a propane compressed air reheat preheater. Follow the instruction referred to the equipment manual for the complete operating instruction for safety precaution connection with the stainless steel flex line with the regulator hydraulic per operating unit. Propane cylinder, make sure all the fittings are tight to connect the hydraulic hose with the power source with the hydraulic propane unit line without inox heating nozzle with this flat piece with the nozzle no higher than the top inside of the mold where the diverging plug with the nozzle tip must be aligned straight up with the down perpendicular with the rail. Prior to starting with the preheating, with the nozzle up slightly to help the start of the flame and ensure that there is no pressure for the diaphragm. Turn with the pressure adjusting screw with the counterclockwise on the propane regulator. Operate hydraulic system in 10 gallons per minute with a 200 psi, 2000 psi. Open hydraulic control valve of the preheater to engage the blower unit. Open the valve of the propane cylinder completely. Open the air base bypass valve located with the inox burn of the air pressure for the easing of the lightning. Turn with the pressure adjusting screw with the clockwise of the propane regulator to supply with the heat to 10 psi. Open the propane valve with the inox heating nozzle to ignite the flame with the placing of the friction lighter of the riser hole. Allow the flame in a warm hole for approximately 10 to 15 seconds to slowly straight with the nozzle and mold with the nozzle with the straight up and down. The flame should be rail air with the rise of the flames over the risers only against the tilt of the nozzle with them slowly straight, but it may be necessary to adjust the flame use the propane on valve located on the inox burner. Ever adjusting the nozzle achieve the desired flame beginning with the preheat with the preferred table 11C. 5.5-inch rail base 119 or smaller, 5 to 6 minutes, wide gap 6.5, and that's the same for the 6-inch rail base with larger 119, and the standard would be 67 minutes, and it did not exceed 8-inch when preheating. Preheating is completed with the required preheat with the achieve of the rail base with the 450 degrees on all four sides with the tip of the mark with the 2.5 inches for the end of the rail with the temp stick with the not use the power meter to check the rail base temperature. Your crucible while preheating the mold of the rail end with the bag with the crucible for the loop and sand craft and you with the crack with the not plate for the crucible directly and you serve with the may allow foreign material with the stick with the bottom of the fill of the crucible with the top of the one diverting the plug with the 30 second prior of the remove of the preheat torch placing it on the top of the edge of the mold with the holding it off the frame with the with the fire tongue with the preheating like complete with the remove the torch and serve the diverter plug with the top of the mold pushing the plug down firmly. Do not pound the plug into place. Note the diverter plug allow with the molten steel with the flow with the mold properly filling the mold evenly. Plate for the crucible onto the mold center over the diverter plug. These are the two large riser holes as the guide. Igniting and pouring to ignite with the charge when you with the stick igniter, light with the igniter with the torch on the inside of the riser hole with the plate for the stick igniter and charge with the crucible to the depth of 1 inch from the step back, not over inside of the do not use the oxy fuel torch ignite with the stick of the igniter with the thermite weld charge. Tap time the time that takes for the igniter to charge the molten steel with the flow without of the crucible except with the tap of the 15 to 35 seconds. If the tap is less than 15 seconds or more than 35 seconds, the weld must be conserved with the defect with removed from the track. Hot middle and slide coming with the contact of the moisture that can cover the explosion when the thermite welding is pouring. Protect yourself and others come in contact with the hot molten steel as high as 5,000 degrees. Bright light with the thermite reaction. Protect your eyes after igniting the charge. Stand back at least 15 feet while the molten steel pours into the mold. If the leak develops on the mold, do not attempt to stop the leak. Minimum takedown times for the following minimum takedown times refer to the remove of the crucible, proper tool placed in safe dry location. Remove the slag pans placed in the safe dry location. Wait 20 minutes before emptying slag pans. Move universal clamp and shoe the demold welded material shear weld with the ensure that you adjust the property 1/8 inch above the railhead before shearing the weld so the top bubbling and started turning clear black and cover the clear shoe. Shear slowly bend down riser without breaking over the accommodated profile grinder with the slag stopping and pouring into the slag pan. Start with the minimum takedown times as follows. Alright, remove the crucible 5 to 9 minutes. Remove the slag pan 5 to 9 minutes. Remove the universal clamp 5 to 9 minutes. Demold 6 and 10.5 minutes. Shear 7 and 11.5 minutes. Remove the base plate and for 3-piece 20 minutes and 30 minutes. Remove the alignment tools, empty slag pans 20 and 30 minutes. Remove risers 25 minutes to 900 degrees. Wide gap to 900 degrees. Remove the rail puller when less than 700 degrees. And after remove the slag pans, place them in a safely dry location which can continue to cool. Alright, remove excess mold with following shape of the requirements for the teardown weld. Wrap around face shield of the goggle. The shape of the goggles must be warm. Remove the mold with the cleaning of the weld. Remove the mono goggle with the sex stars. Even the shape of the goggles may be used as an alternative. Protect yourself with hot metal fragments and sand. Do not discard hot slag where someone could step on it, or that could be started with a grass fire. Do not discard hot slag in the wet soil of the snow and throw it in warm water. Rough grinding. Rough grinding on the railhead portion of thermite welding can be performed after shimmy. The rough grinding of the running with the strip of the rail should be performed with the strip of the grind with the complete with the except for the weld material reduced with approximately 30 thousandths of an inch. Strip of the weld is 700 degrees Fahrenheit is permitted with blue weld. Remove the alignment plate with the place plate according to the takedown time. Remove the pipe lightly tap down toward grounding. Apply rail fasten and strip of the tie tampered solid weight under the weld. Hydraulic tamper if available to train travel with heavy work equipment. Spike tampers and etc. must not be allowed over the thermite weld until the weld has cooled below 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Finishing grind, use the 8x1 straight stone grinder, the tamper. Remove the sharp edge of the teardown drop under the railhead. See figure 11 L. Grind the riser flush with the welded collar. Don't grind into the collar. Don't grind the parent metal. If the conclusion visible cannot be removed, the guy grinding the welder must remove the thermite weld. Must not have the welded collar ground. Has reduced the amount of the metal from the web air with the remove the metal from the weld collar to accommodate rejoint bars is prohibited. Underside of the railhead collar. A vertical offset with a gauge face of the massage apparently grind the rail with achieve the gradual situation transition. Final surface grinding will be performed after each of the weld has cooled below with 700 degrees. Remove the final grinding. Use the straight edge check that you go only with the grind with the straight edge indicate that is needed when the weld temperature is equal to the below 700 degrees. Bluing over the rail welding surface is not permitted. Incidental little effort should be used. The running surface over the weld should be ground with exactly matched with the contour existing rail radiuses to be applied. Gauge and field side no sharp with the edge remaining. Don't grind off the weld of the lower curve of the warm rails. Will create secondary batter, increase the impact forces. The following formula to determine the proper length of the taper of the further 11 E. Minimum ramp length feet, offset with 1,000th of an inch with over 8,000th of an inch. Show the offset with 3,000th of an inch, 4-inch taper of 6,000th of an inch, 16,000th of an inch, 8-inch, 90,000th inch, 12-inch, and 125,000th of an inch, 16th of an inch, 16-inch taper. 1126 welding tolerance specification. Improve the overall track geometry to reduce evaluation car exemption of thermite. Maximum weld tolerance must be as followed. They are cold animated temperature finish crown specifications. Vertical crown 40 thousandths offset 20 thousandths horizontal, 40 thousandths horizontal kink, 25 thousandths base offset horizontal, 60 thousandths with vertical offset with it. Maximum base vertical offset will not exceed 25 thousandths with the insane base width rail. Combined vertical crown offset with 60,000 the maximum expressible tangential deviation 18 inch of the center of the weld with a combined horizontal kink of the offset with a 60,000 inch maximum express as tangential deviation 18 inch of the center of the weld. If the thermite weld has been installed with the U of the trades to measure with the crown vertical offset horizontal kink base offset with the base off vertical offset with the over and over grind. 36-inch crown space for the crown inspection side view with the straight edge vertical offset with the rail strip on the lower plane. Side views 36-inch straight edge horizontal offset with the top of the railhead horizontal offset 36 straight edge with the top of the rail horizontal kink slotted straight edge base horizontal offset slotted straight edge base vertical offset 36-inch surface over grind. Or identify weld. Engineering department require the placement of the metal weld tags on weld. Give the generous amount of the adhesive at the back of the tag with the placement on the field side of the rail with the figure 111, the T with the 11U with the thermite weld tags will be punched indicating the employee ID, not the gang number, the month and the year, and so for the month and year of weld to get it manufactured. Orange gap, white gap weld. Thermite weld quality ability. Managers employee with the thermite weld and quality of audit assumes the workmanship of the weld. The gang and weld is audited submitted with the electronic welding quality auditing system and the TMP. Cleanup. The cleanup of the performed before final grinding cleanup includes reapplying ferrule fasteners, anchor of the filing, filling cribs, remove the angle welded material waste, including slag, spent molds, riser packaging from worksite. The disposal of the property do not leave weld waste exposed at the worksite. Approve the weld bucket can be used to remove the debris of the worksite. Stores item stock 460 701 15. Alright, the Welders Log Booklet. All thermite welds installed must be record welder log book with required information, including plate with the welding charge, sticker with the specified area of the log page. Sticker cannot be placed in the booklet. Sticker information must be written in, and all completed welder log buckets must be kept in a safe location made available for review. Any manager of the representative of the Welders Log Booklet, item number to PB 24095. Alright, thermite head repair weld. On designated track, welding employees have the training qualified and are allowed to install the thermite head repair weld. All personal protective equipment require the thermite welding procedure. One performing die penetration tap wrap around the field to the shield the goggle safety glasses. Goggles XTR with the safety glasses could be either an alternative. Orgo thermite weld quids are available at 115, 119, 132, 133, 136, and 141. Orgo thermo welds internal railhead to remove the grinding head repair welds. Specifically weld the hardware. Alright, rail penetration. Do not weld the non-alloy rail with the rail temperature below 5 degrees. When warm rail, to remove the inch of the moisture of the entire peripheral of the rail. Remove the grinding of the entire defect of the railhead into the web of the rail. Expose the width of 1 inch only with the entire railroad. Remove the camera must be taken out overground with the notch. Use the file hand grinder necessary to remove the sharp edge for the after the defect removal. Tip of the cup will vary depending on the amount of the railhead loss. Use the oxy forge, fuel torch, wire brush clean with the rail with the end of the dirt, oil, grease, the other contaminants. Die penetration test conduct. Die penetration test with the DF. The type of defects not required with the SSC. The type of defects gloves must be worn during the entire process of the brush surface of the rail with a wire brush to remove the contaminants. Clean surface of the rail free of the dirt of the dry. Dirt with a piece of cloth spray with the cleaner surface to remove the oil, grease, and such white with the cloth. Apply with the dye penetration spraying. Like apply with the cover of the air test to apply. Allow 3 to 5 minutes for the dye penetration into the cracks. Wipe off the excess of the penetration surface of the piece of the cloth. Again, spray with the surface of the cleaner to remove the parameters. Red dye, if needed, to spray the developer evenly with the surface of the giving of the thin even layer. This layer absorbs the penetration from the crack. The red spot of the lines appear with the surface to give the visible indication of flaws. Crack, if any, will indicate with the red dye. Absorb the white developer. Remove the white developer before proceeding. Crowning the rail must be crowned using a 36-inch straight edge with a taper rule alignment. Tools crowning will be in a 50,000 to 60,000 inch. Torch height on the preset. Preheater burner height is 3 inches of the measure of the top of the rail. Models and clamps. Set the molds and clamp device. Apply molds. Molds may be filled with rub to ensure the tight fit with the rail, especially with the area directly under the rail head. Care must be taken not to overfill or rub this. It may cause flashing. Place the pouring plug inside of the mold to check the fit. Remove the plug. Cover the top of the molds before beginning packing to prevent contamination entire of the mold cavity. Plaque the molds working from the bottom up. Place the slag pans on each side. Preheating oxy-fuel torch. Preheating using oxy-fuel torch. Both time and temperature requirements must meet with a complete preheat stage. Alright, and then all your 159, 119, 132, 136, 131, and 141. The oxygen is 60 psi and the propane is 15. Preheat temperatures are 2.5 at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for 115, 119, 132, 136, 133, and 141. Alright, inline gauges are required to specify by the Union Pacific Railway track welding rules to provide accurate preheat using the oxy-fuel torch. When using the oxy-fuel torch, connect the torch by placing it into the mold, adjusting frame, readjusting pressure setting if needed, adjust the open preparing control of the torch handle if needed to cool the flame, monitor the preheat during the entire process to ensure that no melting of the rail occurs. Warm diverting plug during the last 30 seconds of the preheat using tongs. After preheating is complete, remove the torch and place crucible. Use igniter, ignite charge, stand back at least 15 feet while ignition of the process for the pouring of the weld takes place. Do not attempt to stop any leak. Take down time for the minimum takedown times are remove the crucible slag pans in 3 minutes, remove the mold, clamp the device in 4 minutes, remove the top mold, the demold in 5 minutes, sear slowly in 5 minutes. When demolding procedure slowly, watch for leaks, keep rails loose when shearing. Protect weld from cooling. Rail temperatures is above the low 40 degrees. High wind conditions apply with the cooling cap immediately after shearing to reduce the cooling rate with the weld until the welding temperature 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Remove the chapter 101 and 110 11 for the weather condition requirements. Hard rough grinding welding. Even the material reduced to 30,000 inches and head. Do not finish with the grinding blend with the weld. The temperature of above 700 degrees Fahrenheit will result in low weld. Do not grind on parent steel. With the result of the dipping barrel and level the knee with the tape of the rail with due to the appearance with the existing barrel that is present that require the tampering and smooth transition. This may be apparent on some of the SSC type defects empty slag with the pans. Remove the crown device for 20 minutes after the pour is completed. Time begins at the last dab. Drop of the slag flow from the slag base and finishing grinding weld the match for the contour with the existing rail. Indication flash under the barrel head must be removed by grinding flash crowns to relieve the defect of development. All weld identified with the turn weld tag and the green tag for the tag of the identification. Ensure the weld accurately and independent. Ensure the reporting system using code OH or go thermite head weld. Alright, cleanup. Cleanup that can be performed before final grinding. Cleanup includes reapplying rail fasteners, applying anchors, filling the cribs, removing any weld material wasted, including the slag, spent molds, risers, packaging, worksite that dispose of the properly. Do not leave the weld and waste exposed to the worksite. Proof welding bucket can be used to remove the debris from the worksite. Stock number 460, 7115. Core weld installation information of the Welders Log Book. Acquired molds and equipment, orgothermo head repair kits, temp stick grinder, abrasive equipment, hardware, die penetration. 112 electrical flash butt welding.